Small SUVs are all the rage right now, but the number of cars in the field has exploded so much in the last few years, it really is hard to keep up, as automakers attempt to pursue new buyer groups in ever more niche categories. The two cars we're looking at for this test, for example, are two we've looked at earlier this year, and they're technically in different size categories, even though they're very close on price. The Subaru XV 2.0i Premium is a mid-spec small SUV, while the Ford Puma ST line is a high-spec light SUV. We know buyers won't necessarily care about these definitions, as these cars are likely to be cross-shopped anyway on their price. So we thought we'd take a closer look at the pros and cons of each and some factors you might want to consider to help you decide which one might be right for you.
Before we do, remember you'll be able to read the full written review and others like it over on carsguide.com.au. And if you're enjoying our reviews on YouTube, remember to hit those like, subscribe and bell notification icons to stay up to date with all of our latest content.
As always, this video will be chopped into our 8 review subheads, so if you do want to skip ahead to the part that interests you, here are the timecodes on the screen now. On YouTube, they'll also be in the timeline or the description below. First up for this video, pricing and specs. The Subaru XV is an established player here, having been on the market for a while, and in this mid-spec 2.0i premium trim, it wears an MSRP you'll see on your screen now. We're pitching it against a relative newcomer, the Ford Puma ST line. Technically, the ST line is also the middle of the Puma range, but it errs more towards the top of the price and spec scheme for its light SUV niche. Firstly, there are some key differences between these two which you should know. The XV is slightly larger and shares its SGP underpinnings with the Impreza hatchback. It's also all-wheel drive across the range. Meanwhile, the Puma is overall slightly more compact, sharing its underpinnings with the smaller Fiesta hatch. The Puma range is front drive only and has an engine which is half the size of its Subaru rival here, with the added punch of turbocharging. We'll get into the engine specs and interior space shortly, but for now it's worth noting how closely these two cars are matched on equipment. Both have 8-inch multimedia touchscreens with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, both have 17-inch alloy wheels, both have cloth interior trim with manually adjustable seats, and both have push-start ignition. Where they differ is really a case of give and take. The Subaru gains keyless entry and dual-zone climate, while the Puma makes do with remote entry and air conditioning, but instead gains LED headlights and a digital dash, where the Subaru makes do with analog dials and halogen globes. The Puma extends its tech lead with USB-C and a wireless charger, which the Subi misses out on altogether, although it's worth remembering it gets all-wheel drive instead. Overall, we'd still consider the Subaru the winner here, as the Japanese brand also throws in a sunroof and extra safety features for free, which we'll look at later, while both those things are optional on the Ford. Next up, design. These cars seem to have a similar intent on the specs, but their design languages are starkly different. The Subaru XV is traditional and conservative, matching the rest of the brand's range and having changed only slightly since its inception. We think the Subi will appeal to the buyer who wants their car less likely to draw eyes, but one that is quietly attractive nonetheless. It does have an element of toughness about it though, with those plastic-clad guards hinting at its extra off-road prowess. The Puma is more of a statement. It sits apart from other small and light SUVs on the road with its swoopy design, exemplified by its aerodynamic, almost Porsche-like light fittings, as well as its sporty bumper and spoiler fittings, which instantly relate it with Ford's ST range of hot hatches. The ST line is an SUV for someone looking for something a bit more exciting and engaging, but it also offers a slightly smaller footprint than its rival here, so perhaps also someone who needs to trade space for the ability to park in tight city spaces. On the outside, these two cars appeal to buyers of completely different tastes, but on the inside, I think we have more of a clear winner. The Subaru feels a bit more upmarket and much more spacious than its Ford rival here. It also offers relatively high-quality trims, big comfortable seats, a standout steering wheel clad in nice synthetic leather, as well as a dazzling array of screens, which some may consider a little busy. The Puma, meanwhile, leaves a bit more to be desired. The quality of the plastic trims is decidedly lower than in the Subaru, with an abundance of hard surfaces and a monotone color treatment. The Puma's smaller underpinnings are on full show in the front seat, with the cabin feeling narrower and almost claustrophobic in comparison to its rival. That having been said, the Puma also has a sporty and nicely trimmed steering wheel and a flashy digital dash which somehow makes it feel a bit more techy than its Subaru rival. On the design front then, I'd say our competitors are pretty closely matched depending on what you're looking for. The Subaru is hands down a win for the interior design and quality, while the Puma is just more fun and daring from the outside. Next up, practicality. One of our competitors here is a clear winner, and it's due to its larger underpinnings. It's quite clearly the Subaru XV. With its wider and more spacious cabin, I flagged the XV as being particularly easy to live with on my recent long-term review of the top-spec hybrid variant. The seats are comfortable and adjustable, the storage in the cabin is plentiful, and importantly, there are pretty much no ergonomic blunders that I flagged during my test. In fact, after 3 months of living with an XV, there isn't a single glaring issue I found when it comes to this car's cabin. It's just that easy to live with. Even the doors open nice and wide, good for fitting child seats or loading luggage, and even taller people than me will fit with space in the back seats. Sadly, there's no adjustable air vents or power outlets for rear passengers. The main downside, despite its larger footprint, the XV somehow has a significantly smaller boot than the Puma. For example, when our full CarsGuide luggage set is loaded, it blocks your vision out the rear. Comparatively, the Puma has an excellent boot for its size class with a much higher claimed measurement. While it is a different shape than the XV's boot, it still fits our CarsGuide luggage set with ease, and you can even still see out the back. The Puma's larger boot comes at a cost to rear passenger space though, with a much tighter and more Spartan space compared to the Subaru. I had my knees hard up against the front seat set to my own driving position, and I have to duck under the Puma's descending roofline to get in. Like the Subaru, there are no adjustable air vents or power outlets back there. In the front, the Puma feels narrow, and the interior fittings don't help it feel more spacious, with its multimedia screen and particularly the A-pillar leaving you with a feeling of limited real estate. The Puma also has a few smaller practicality irks, with air conditioning rather than single press climate control being one, and the lack of keyless entry being another. Do we have a winner then? Yep, it's easily the XV here. The comparison between these two engines is a revealing one because it shows there's much more to a car's story than raw power figures or even the power to weight ratio. In one corner we have the XV. It has Subaru's typical 4-cylinder boxer non-turbo engine which drives all 4 wheels via a continuously variable transmission. It has more power than the Ford, and even though the XV weighs more, still pulls ahead on power to weight. Meanwhile, the Puma has an engine which is literally half the size, a 1-litre 3-cylinder turbo engine which drives only the front wheels via a very European-style 7-speed dual-clutch automatic. It's got lower power figures than the Subaru at what you'll see on your screen now, and a lower power to weight too. Despite that, the Puma is vastly more engaging to drive, and we'll look at why in a moment. Yep, the Puma is miles better behind the wheel despite its apparent lack of punch on paper, but this fails to take into account the difference a transmission and a turbocharger can make in the real world. The combination of these two means the Puma feels far more snappy and responsive, thanks to its peak torque arriving much earlier and its transmission snapping between the gears far more efficiently than the lethargic continuously variable in the Subaru. To boot, the Puma's gruff little engine has loads of character, and the whole package feels zippy thanks to a super direct steering tune and a firm ride. It's not all rosy for the little Ford though, which feels a little more limited on the visibility front than its rival, as well as a little less comfortable and secure despite alarmingly good handling. Dual clutches also have a tendency to be a little glitchy at low speed, but the Puma isn't too bad compared to most of its rivals here. It's not very hard to park, with trim dimensions and sensors all round when the worthwhile park pack is selected. It's certainly the driver's car of the pair, and it's great to live with in the confines of a city. So if you're seeking an SUV but are still a keen driver, the Puma is a compelling option, particularly as fun to drive SUVs in this category are few and far between. The Subaru, meanwhile, makes its bigger engine feel somehow stressed, as it drags all four wheels and its doughy CVT sucks the responsiveness out of the equation. It has enough power to get going and feels secure on the road, but frustratingly, it's left short of feeling fun. That having been said, the balanced weight from the all-wheel drive system makes it stick to the road well, and will get you out of hairy scenarios on wet or unsealed surfaces fairly easily. The Subaru is no nonsense compared to the Puma, and while its transmission is no fun, it is easy to use and park with. To give the XV an extra leg up for parking duties, it does also score a forward-facing camera, so you no longer need to worry about how close your nose is to cars or objects in front. It's also particularly easy to see out of and steer, with a sensible steering tune and comfortable ride, which family buyers will love. So then, you're stuck with a conundrum here. These cars are quite different to drive. Those who are keen behind the wheel will love the way the Puma feels, but the XV is easier to use and live with thanks to its no-nonsense but much less fun approach. What about fuel consumption? Fuel consumption came surprisingly close despite how different these two SUVs are mechanically. While the Subaru appears to lack the modern touch the Puma has, incremental improvements to its engine and transmission over time have led to improved fuel numbers too. Officially, non-hybrid XVs will use this much fuel, and during our testing, ours consumed this much, which you'll note is not far from the claim. In comparison, the Euro-style Puma tries to cut fuel usage by way of its smaller engine and plenty of ratios in that dual-clutch transmission. But perhaps because it's much more entertaining to drive, I missed the mark by quite a bit during my testing, with the ultimate consumption figures ending up higher than that of the heavier all-wheel drive Subaru. Both cars have what should now be considered the expected suite of modern safety features, but it's worth considering that one has some of these behind a paywall, although even with that option ticked, the value equation is still evenly matched. The Subaru comes fully packed with the brand's stereo camera-based EyeSight safety suite, which grants auto emergency braking, lane keep assist, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and adaptive cruise control. It also packs 7 airbags and the expected electronic features for a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. Meanwhile, the Puma scores auto emergency braking and lane keep assist as standard, but misses out on blind spot monitoring and adaptive cruise control, which require you to tick the oddly named Park Pack option box. There's no rear cross traffic alert, but the Puma picks up front and rear parking sensors, while the XV makes do with front and rear cameras instead. The Puma is also rated 5 stars on the ANCAP scale, but to a more recent 2019 standard. Both cars have closely matched ownership promises, with both having 5-year and unlimited kilometre warranties. There are some subtleties though which we think will give one car the edge. While both have roadside assist, the Puma gets ahead with a bookable loan car or pick-up and drop-off service, and it also costs on average nearly $200 less per yearly workshop visit. This is a surprisingly closely matched test. We think the winner for you, regardless of our scores, will be down to lifestyle. For a couple in a city, the Puma is fun and engaging to drive and live with an interesting design and a small footprint. But if you have a child or pets or are considering either, the XV is larger on the inside and easier to live with, and it does also offer a bit more capability for adventures. On the points though, the Puma gets the edge just slightly for its superior driving experience, lower cost of ownership, and fun design. But take it with a grain of salt and drive both. Neither car here is a wrong choice, and we think the Subi will be right for a lot of buyers too.